All right, before we get going, Joshua, we got to do our power rankings. This week, they are presented by Citi, as always. And we're going to talk about the teams that have the most on the line heading into this postseason. Now, this was a hard list to put together because I wanted to make sure that there's a lot of playoff teams represented, because I think that we don't know a lot about the opt-outs and how everyone else is going to handle the bowl games that are not part of the CFP. But I had to include USC. So I have them in there at number 5 because they are regressing under Lincoln Riley. And I just feel like this is one, even no matter what the level of the bowl game is, no matter the state of the roster and what you want out of the portal, what you want to sign, how you want to do this. By the way, they had some flips. They lost some guys as well on signing day. I just feel like it's one of those things where you need some sort of positive momentum. You need either young guys to flash, you need to win a game, you need to do something to springboard you into next season if you're Lincoln Riley and you had a bunch of final minute losses. Year 1 in the Big Ten was tougher than expected. And honestly, you were a lot closer to barely making bowl eligibility than you probably would have liked. So I've got them in there at number 5. Do you agree having them on the list?
Yes. And to your point, if we go back to about a year ago this time, people were like, oh man, how did Lincoln Riley only win 8 games or whatever it was, 7 games with Caleb Williams? And then Miller Moss has a big bowl game and people are like, oh man, USC is going to be great as they head into the Big Ten. Didn't happen, but you can set the narrative for what the offseason, the upcoming season are going to look like based off of the bowl performance.
Okay, so as we look at the playoff teams, let's go back to the top of the list. The team that I think has the most on the line is Ohio State. We talked about this at the top of the show. Ryan Day has to win a national championship, right? That's the only way to get the taste out of your mouth from 4 straight losses to Michigan. And 3 of them were to good Michigan teams. This one was not. This is a team that threw for 62 yards in that game and still managed to beat you. So I think Ohio State is pretty self-explanatory. A lot on the line, need to win some games here. Probably need to win it all to take some of the heat off of Ryan Day. Number 2, I got Penn State in here because this is a team that we have used as a poster child for the college football playoff expanding. They would have been in it more than anybody else if this format had existed over the last decade. There was a lot of pressure on James Franklin and this team to get there in year 1 with the barriers removed. They didn't have to play Michigan and Ohio State anymore every year. They're well positioned to host a game. I think even if they lose to Oregon, but I think they got to win a game now. I think especially if you're going to be hosting, I think that would be a huge disappointment to lose a home game in the first round of the first ever 12-team CFP.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It always felt to me like making it wouldn't be good enough because it would essentially be the same thing as going 10-2 is if you make it and then you go out in the first round. I think they have to win. And in particular, if they're hosting a game in front of that crowd, they better bring it.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right. So then I've got Texas in there at number 3. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on the Longhorns and Sark, but this is a team that made the playoff last year and got beat, right? So they haven't won a game in the CFP era yet. And I think that coming into the season, a lot of people thought maybe they're the best team in the country. For a good portion of the season, we had them at number 1, thought that they were going to be the best team in the country. Joshua, I think we both had them as our national champion pick at the midseason. So I think that there is some pressure to go on a run here, to go on a deep run here. And to get, to really kind of cap the season off on a high note and show what you built from the experience you had last year of getting to the CFP, what it takes to win a game. I've talked to Texas players this season about that, and they know, right? They have that experience from last year. I've got Alabama in there at number 4. I think there's going to be a little bit of, we need to justify why we're in this thing if they get in. Because there is a lot of buzz around those bad losses. Nobody else would have a loss to Vanderbilt and a blowout loss to Oklahoma late November and still get into the bracket. But Alabama, the committee clearly loves them. They think very highly of their high end and their top 20 wins. And then I think there's some pressure on Kalen DeBoer. There's been some really high highs and some really low lows for him in year 1. So I just think it's a really mixed bag on how you evaluate season 1 for Kalen. And you throw in controversial selection to the CFP if they get the last spot in. And I think they need to do something. I think they need to win at least one game. and prove that they belong and prove that what Kalen DeBoer is doing. Yes, you've had the highs and the lows this season, but you see where it's going, and it's not going to be as much of a roller coaster next year.
Yeah, the Kalen DeBoer angle, I think, is the most interesting one for me. Like the committee is going to do what the committee does. And like I guess Alabama might feel like they need to justify being in there, but that's really not on them. That's on the committee. And I don't think anybody should try to make them look right anyway, neither here nor there. But for Kalen DeBoer, it was always this, well, he's an outsider. He's not from the South. Can he really do it? The SEC, it's different down here. And like, can he do it? I mean, the way I saw him jump out on Georgia, like, I think we know he can do it. But to your point, that Oklahoma thing was nasty. That Vanderbilt thing was nasty. And people are going to remember those moments much more than the ones where you looked really good. So just for the sake of him being able to like have a kind of normal offseason in terms of like weird narratives, this is going to be a big one.
There is a lot on the line, and we still don't even know exactly what the paths are going to be for some of these teams. We will on Sunday. We will finally get the final CFP bracket. We will find out if there are any snubs. We will see who's got the easiest path to the national title game. So much still to come as we watch conference championship games and then finally get the bracket.